Yellow police tape fluttered against the morning breeze, cutting across the pristine white pillars of one of Lagos' most exclusive addresses. The normally quiet street in Ikoyi, home to Nigeria's elite, buzzed with official vehicles and curious onlookers. Through the tall iron gates, uniformed officers moved with purpose across the manicured lawn. Just 24 hours earlier, this compound had hosted a birthday celebration for the youngest child of the Okonkwo family. Now, forensic technicians carefully documented blood patterns on imported marble floors. Adebayo Okonkwo wasn't supposed to end up like this. At 48, he stood at the peak of Nigeria's telecommunications industry. The man who started selling phone cards from a wooden kiosk 2 decades ago now occupied the 30th floor of Lagos' most impressive business tower. His company, Gen Communications, connected millions across West Africa. His handshake opened government doors. His charity initiatives made newspaper headlines. He built something extraordinary, a business associate would later tell reporters, but he couldn't maintain what mattered most. What began as routine infidelity, a powerful man, a younger woman, secret hotel meetings, collided with something far more volatile when his wife discovered evidence of betrayal tucked inside a suit pocket. The events that unfolded that evening transformed lives irreversibly. What pushed a respected businessman's household from wealth and status to bloodshed and tragedy? What followed the moment Folake Okonkwo confronted her husband with proof of his affair with his secretary? Before we continue with this shocking story of success, betrayal, and fatal consequences, take a moment to subscribe to True Crime Stories. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss our weekly explorations of cases that remind us how quickly ordinary decisions can lead to extraordinary tragedy. Born in Abeokuta, a modest city northwest of Lagos, Adebayo Okonkwo's childhood offered few hints of his future wealth. His father taught mathematics at a local secondary school, while his mother operated a small fabric shop in the Central Market. Their combined income provided just enough for basic necessities and school fees for Adebayo and his 2 younger sisters. "My parents taught me that knowledge builds wealth," Adebayo once explained during a university commencement speech. "My father would say, they can take your money, but never your education." This philosophy drove him to excel academically, eventually earning a scholarship to study business administration at the University of Lagos. The telecommunications revolution sweeping across Africa in the early 2000s caught Adebayo's attention immediately. While working at a banking institution, he noticed how difficult it was for ordinary Nigerians to access mobile communication. Phone cards were expensive, and service providers catered primarily to wealthy clients. In 2003, using his savings and loans from family members, he opened his first mobile phone card kiosk near Computer Village in Ikeja. Unlike competitors, he focused on smaller denominations that average workers could afford. "Communication shouldn't be a luxury," became his first business motto. Within 18 months, one kiosk grew to 7 locations across Lagos. By 2007, Adebayo had established Gen Communications, initially as a mobile virtual network operator leasing infrastructure from larger companies. What distinguished his approach was attention to underserved markets, rural communities, and lower-income urban areas that major telecoms overlooked. A former colleague recalled, Adebayo could spot opportunities in market gaps others dismissed as unprofitable. Where they saw poor customers, he saw millions of potential users willing to pay affordable rates. His business days typically began at 5 a.m. with exercise and prayer, followed by intensive research on telecommunication trends across emerging markets. Staff meetings started promptly at 7:30 a.m., where he expected comprehensive updates and clear solutions to ongoing challenges. He wasn't interested in excuses, remembered Chidi Okafor, an early executive at Gent. Either you had results or a concrete plan to achieve them. Nothing in between would satisfy him. This demanding management style yielded impressive outcomes. By 2012, Gen Communications had secured enough capital to build its own infrastructure, breaking dependency on established networks. Government contracts followed as Nigeria's administration recognized the company's ability to deliver connectivity to previously neglected regions. The prestigious African Business Leadership Award recognized Adebayo in 2016, citing his transformative approach to accessible communication technology. His acceptance speech emphasized creating wealth that benefited communities, not just shareholders, though those shareholders enjoyed consistent returns that outperformed market averages. Evening routines proved as rigorous as mornings. Dinner meetings with potential investors, government officials, or international partners often stretched past midnight. He maintained a private dining room at Lagos' exclusive Harbor Point Club, where waitstaff knew to reserve the corner table overlooking the water for his business discussions. Work-life balance wasn't in his vocabulary, noted his longtime driver, Joseph. Some nights I'd drive him from one meeting to another until 2 a.m., then pick him up again before sunrise. The man lived on determination and very little sleep. By 2023, Gen Communications employed over 3,000 people across Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, with expansion plans for Tanzania and Uganda already underway. The company headquarters occupied 15 floors of a modern glass tower in Victoria Island's business district, a far cry from that first wooden kiosk 20 years earlier. What few recognized, beneath the business triumphs and calculated decisions, was how this relentless pursuit of success gradually reshaped his personal priorities and relationships at home. Adebayo met Folake Adeyemi at a banking conference in 2005. She worked as a financial analyst for one of Nigeria's leading investment firms, having earned her master's degree in economics from the London School of Economics. Their connection wasn't immediate. Folake initially found Adebayo's confidence bordering on arrogance, but his persistence won her over after 3 dinner invitations. "I refused him twice," Folake told her sister. "I wanted to see if he could handle not getting his way." When he sent a handwritten letter outlining why their perspectives on Nigeria's economic future would complement each other, she finally agreed to dinner. Their courtship balanced professional respect with growing affection. Folake's analytical mindset matched Adebayo's strategic thinking. They married in 2008 in a ceremony that joined 2 families and signaled Adebayo's arrival among Lagos' established business class. The 600-guest wedding at the Federal Palace Hotel featured politicians, business leaders, and cultural icons. Their first child, Tund, arrived in 2010, followed by daughter Lola in 2013. The family settled into a compound in Ikoyi with household staff, including a cook, driver, 2 nannies, and security personnel. Folake resigned from her banking career after Tund's birth, channeling her organizational talents into managing their expanding household and Adebayo's social obligations. Being the wife of Adebayo meant becoming a brand ambassador for his vision. Folake explained to a friend, "I represented our family while he built his empire." She organized charity galas that raised millions for educational initiatives, arranged dinner parties with potential investors, and maintained relationships with political figures whose regulatory decisions affected Gent Communications. Their children attended the prestigious Atlantic International School, associating with offspring of ambassadors and oil executives. The family appeared regularly in society publications and business profiles. Photos showed them at polo tournaments, art exhibitions, and exclusive beach resorts. They embodied the aspirational Nigerian success story, wealth created through entrepreneurship, rather than government connections or inherited privilege. Yet behind closed doors, emotional fissures developed. Adebayo's expanding business demands meant fewer family dinners and missed school performances. Communications between husband and wife increasingly focused on logistics and social appearances rather than personal connection. "I maintained our life while he maintained his business," Folake later confided to her closest friend. "We operated in parallel, not together." She compensated by creating structure and stability for their children. Weekends featured museum visits, swimming lessons, and family movie nights that Adebayo frequently missed. When he did attend family functions, his phone constantly demanded attention. Folake managed his growing distance with practiced grace. She joined board of cultural foundations and mentored young female entrepreneurs, building her own identity beyond Adebayo's wife. To outsiders, she projected fulfillment and purpose. In private moments, she questioned whether her husband remembered why they'd married in the first place. "You're becoming a stranger in your own home," she told him during a rare moment alone, approximately 8 months before the tragedy. "Your children are growing up without knowing their father, His response, a promise to improve after the next business expansion, felt familiar. She'd heard similar commitments before, each followed by longer absences and increased emotional withdrawal. Amara Nwosu joined Gent Communications in January 2020, bringing impressive credentials and quiet determination. At 29, she had already built a solid professional foundation with a business degree from Covenant University and 3 years of executive administrative experience at a multinational oil company. The position as executive assistant to Adebayo Okonkwo represented both opportunity and challenge, working directly with one of Nigeria's most demanding business leaders. I applied knowing his reputation for perfectionism, Amara told a colleague during her first week. That's exactly why I wanted this job. I learned from people who expect excellence. Her resume had stood out among dozens of applicants, but it was her interview performance that secured the position. When asked about handling conflicting priorities, she presented a systematic approach to task management that impressed the HR director. When Adebayo himself posed a scenario about a communication crisis during her final interview, her measured response demonstrated both quick thinking and diplomatic skill. The previous executive assistant had lasted 14 months before accepting a less demanding position elsewhere. Gent's upper management privately wondered if Amara would survive longer. They underestimated her adaptability and resolve. Within weeks, she reorganized Adebayo's chaotic scheduling system, created efficient protocols for filtering communications, and developed briefing documents that transformed how he prepared for meetings. Her meticulous attention to detail meant he entered every negotiation with precisely the information needed to succeed. She anticipates problems before they materialize, Adebayo commented to his operations director. It's like having a chess player managing my day. Amara's workday typically began an hour before Adebayo arrived. She prepared his office, reviewed overnight developments in telecommunications markets, and prioritized the day's most urgent matters. When international partners called outside business hours, she fielded initial discussions, taking detailed notes for follow-up. Her colleagues noticed Adebayo's typically brisk communication style softened when addressing Amara, where others received abrupt directives. She experienced actual conversations. When she offered suggestions on improving client presentations or streamlining internal processes, he listened rather than dismissed. If you're finding this story compelling so far, hit the like button. Your engagement helps others discover this channel and these important explorations of human relationships, ambition, and their sometimes tragic consequences. By her 6th month, Amara had become indispensable to Gent's operations. When a potential investor from South Africa expressed hesitation about certain financial projections, Amara worked through the night developing alternative scenarios. The comprehensive analysis she provided became a foundation for securing a critical investment. Adebayo's appreciation manifested in small ways initially. Public acknowledgement during staff meetings, a generous performance bonus, increasing responsibilities that reflected growing trust. He began requesting her presence in meetings where executive assistants typically wouldn't participate. Your perspective is valuable, he told her after she identified a potential regulatory issue others had overlooked. You see connections we miss. For Amara, this recognition fulfilled professional ambitions she'd harbored since university. Her family in Enugu had sacrificed to fund her education, believing she would achieve what they could not. Each success at Gent validated their faith and her own determination. The evolution from strictly professional interaction to something more personal occurred gradually. Late evening strategy sessions meant shared meals ordered to the conference room. Their conversations extended beyond business to books, politics, and perspectives on Nigeria's future. He asked about her family. She inquired about his children's achievements. Neither acknowledged a subtle shift occurring between them, how their chairs gradually moved closer during lengthy document reviews, how their eyes held contact seconds longer than necessary, how each found reasons to extend working hours when their tasks could have waited until morning. The line between professional dedication and personal attraction blurred during a Wednesday evening in May 2020. Adebayo and Amara had stayed late finalizing a presentation for potential investors from Dubai. Rain pounded against the office windows, transforming Lagos into a watercolor of blurred lights 30 floors below. The building had mostly emptied. Even the cleaning staff had completed their rounds. We should finish tomorrow, Amara suggested, noticing the time, 11:45 p.m. The meeting's at 9 a.m., Adebayo replied, loosening his tie. Let's push through. I'll have my driver take you home afterward. She nodded and continued reviewing financial projections while he ordered late dinner from a nearby restaurant that catered to night shift workers. They ate at his desk, discussing market expansion strategies with unusual ease. The formal barriers that typically defined their interactions had softened in the late hour. When Amara reached for a document, her hand briefly touched his. Neither immediately pulled away. The moment lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but both felt its significance. Adebayo cleared his throat and redirected attention to the presentation. Yet something had shifted. You've transformed how this company operates, he told her later that night, his voice carrying unexpected warmth. I'm not sure what I did before you arrived. The compliment, delivered as they gathered their belongings to leave, hung in the air between them. Amara, normally quick with professional responses, simply held his gaze. Neither spoke for several moments. Thank you for seeing my value, she finally replied. In the car, sitting closer than necessary in the spacious back seat, Adebayo's hand found hers in the darkness. Both understood they were making choices that contradicted professional ethics and personal commitments. Neither spoke of stopping. The following week brought deliberately created moments alone, requesting Amara's assistance in the private conference room, scheduling end-of-day meetings that inevitably ran late, finding reasons for weekend work when the office stood empty. Each instance built toward increasing intimacy. A hand on a shoulder, standing unnecessarily close while reviewing documents, conversations that wander from business to personal dreams. This is just professional closeness, Adebayo told himself while thinking about her during family dinner. Exceptional working relationships require trust and connection. Amara's rationalization took different forms. He values my mind, she explained to her reflection while preparing for work. This is about mutual respect and shared vision. She carefully ignored how her heart raced when the elevator doors opened to reveal him each morning. Their first kiss happened after successfully securing a major government contract. The celebration with the executive team ended at 8 p.m., but Adebayo asked Amara to stay to discuss implementation strategies. Once alone, conversation quickly abandoned work topics. You understand me in ways no one has, he told her, standing too close beside the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking nighttime Lagos. When his hand touched her face, she leaned into it rather than pulling away. The guilt arrived immediately afterward for both of them. Adebayo mentioned his wife's name twice during their next conversation, as if reminding himself of her existence. Amara declined his invitation to dinner the following evening, claiming family obligations. For 3 days, they maintained careful professional distance. Yet the excitement of forbidden connection proved more powerful than moral reservations. Both began living double lives. The professional personas they presented to colleagues, and an increasingly intimate relationship they cultivated in private moments. I know this isn't right, Amara whispered during a stolen moment in his private office one evening. Nothing about this feels wrong when we're together, he answered, the contradiction lost on him. Each recognized the potential consequences. Adebayo had built his reputation on business acumen and ethical leadership. Amara had worked relentlessly to earn professional respect rather than advancement through personal connections. Both understood the damage discovery would cause. Yet each meeting intensified their connection. They created elaborate justifications. They weren't hurting anyone if nobody knew. Their unique understanding of each other transcended conventional relationships. They deserve happiness after working so diligently. We'll be careful, became their mutual promise, though neither acknowledged what careful meant in practical terms or how long such caution could realistically be maintained. Their first meeting outside the office occurred at the Peninsula Hotel, a boutique establishment in Victoria Island's quieter section. Adebayo selected it for its reputation for discretion and its distance from Gent Communications headquarters. He booked the room under his company's corporate account, but requested no receipt be sent to the main accounting department, instead directing bills to his personal assistant for executive accommodations during late strategy sessions. The hotel staff, accustomed to Lego's business elite and their private arrangements, asked no questions when Adebayo arrived first and Amara followed 30 minutes later. A generous tip to the floor manager ensured their names remained unmentioned and their presence unacknowledged. "We need space to think without office distractions," Adebayo explained when Amara initially questioned the hotel setting. The pretense dissolved quickly. By their third meeting, both had abandoned performance of professional purpose. They established patterns designed to minimize detection. Tuesday and Thursday evenings became their regular meeting times. Adebayo told his wife these were standing dinner meetings with international investors. Amara informed her roommate she had joined an evening business development course. They never arrived together or left simultaneously. Their phones remained on but silence. Professional emergencies the only acceptable interruption. "These hours belong just to us," Adebayo told her during their sixth meeting, expressing something that increasingly resembled genuine affection. What had begun as physical attraction had evolved into deeper emotional territory. They discussed childhood memories, professional frustrations, and personal aspirations that extended beyond career achievements. For Amara, the relationship satisfied intellectual and emotional needs her previous partnerships had neglected. "You actually listen when I speak," she told him during a rare Sunday afternoon meeting. "You engage with my thoughts, not just my presence." Adebayo found himself sharing vulnerabilities he concealed from everyone else. Doubts about business decisions, fears of failure, regrets regarding his children. "With you, I don't need to be the unwavering COO," he confessed. "I can simply be myself." This growing emotional investment led to increasing carelessness. Adebayo extended their meetings despite scheduling conflicts. He called Amara from his family home, speaking in coded language his wife might easily decipher. During a weekend company retreat, they risked being seen entering the same cabin after midnight. The first near discovery occurred when Folake unexpectedly visited the Gent Communications office to drop off documents Adebayo had forgotten at home. Finding her husband and his assistant sitting unusually close, reviewing financial statements with hands almost touching, she paused by the doorway. Adebayo quickly shifted his position, but Folake's lingering gaze suggested unspoken questions. "She suspects nothing," Adebayo assured Amara afterward. "She trusts me completely." The statement revealed more about his willingness to betray that trust than providing genuine reassurance. A more dangerous moment happened when Chidi Okafor, Gent's operations director, spotted them entering the Peninsula Hotel 15 minutes apart. Though they had carefully timed their arrivals, a delayed meeting had put Chidi in the lobby at precisely the wrong moment. The following day, he casually mentioned seeing Adebayo, working late with the team at unusual locations. Board members require privacy for sensitive discussions. Adebayo responded smoothly. The explanation seemed to satisfy Chidi, but both Adebayo and Amara realized their arrangement carried increasing risks. Despite these warnings, Adebayo's caution diminished rather than intensified. He began leaving evidence of their meetings. Text messages on delete, calendar entries insufficiently disguised, hotel confirmation emails carelessly accessible on his laptop. When Amara pointed out these dangers, he dismissed her concerns. "You worry too much," he told her. "Nobody examines my affairs that closely." His most significant lapse occurred in June 2023, 6 months into their relationship, after a particularly meaningful evening together, one where future possibilities had been tentatively discussed. Adebayo paid their hotel bill with his personal credit card rather than the company account. The receipt, printed and handed to him at checkout, contained the hotel name, room details, and duration of stay. He absent-mindedly placed it in his suit pocket, where it remained forgotten. What thoughts do you have about workplace relationships? Comment below with your perspective on how power dynamics affect professional boundaries and whether such relationships can ever truly be equal. Your experiences and insights help build our community of thoughtful crime story analysts. Wednesday afternoons were when Folake typically organized a household, including preparing Adebayo's suits for the weekly dry cleaning pickup. On this particular June afternoon, she moved methodically through her tasks while the household staff tended to other duties. Music played softly from her phone as she emptied her husband's pockets before placing each suit in the designated collection bag. The receipt fell out of his navy pinstripe jacket, his favorite, the one he'd worn just yesterday. At first glance, it seemed like standard business documentation, something she would normally set aside with keys, coins, and business cards for his desk. But the Peninsula Hotel logo caught her attention immediately. Folake knew every hotel where Gent Communications held legitimate business functions. This boutique establishment wasn't among them. She read the details slowly. A suite charge for 8 hours rather than overnight, an unusually large room service order for just 2 people, and most troublingly, payment made on his personal credit card rather than the company account. Perhaps there's an explanation, she whispered to herself, placing the receipt carefully on her vanity table rather than returning it to his pocket. The dry cleaning could wait. She needed to think. Doubt crept through her thoughts as she reviewed recent changes in her husband's behavior. The late meetings that never appeared in the company calendar she occasionally checked. His newfound attention to cologne selection. The decrease in physical affection at home coupled with sudden compliments about her appearance, as if compensating for something. Folake's practical nature took control. Rather than confronting him immediately with insufficient evidence, she determined to investigate thoroughly. Her background in financial analysis provided skills perfectly suited for methodical information gathering. First, she reviewed their joint credit card statements, finding 3 previous charges on the peninsula across recent months. Each occurred on either Tuesday or Thursday evenings between 7 p.m. and midnight. She checked his calendar for those dates, finding vague entries labeled investor strategy sessions, but no specific names. 15 years of marriage, she told her reflection in the bathroom mirror. How could I have missed this? Her next step proved more difficult emotionally. She contacted Adebayo's driver, Joseph, who had served their family faithfully for over a decade. Their conversation required careful navigation. Joseph, I need to surprise my husband for our anniversary, she explained. Could you tell me which restaurants he's visited recently for his investor meetings? I'd like to reserve somewhere he enjoys. Joseph's hesitation told her everything. Madam, most evenings I drop him at the Peninsula Hotel. He usually asks me to return after 2 or 3 hours. The confirmation sent physical pain through her chest. Still, she maintained composure, thanking Joseph and ending the call. She sat motionless for nearly 30 minutes, processing what she now knew to be true. The question of his companion remained. Suspicion pointed toward his executive assistant, the woman whose name increasingly appeared in his conversations, the woman he described as exceptionally capable with unusual frequency. The investigation required certain resolution. Folake's university friend, Ngozi, had practiced corporate law for 15 years and maintained connections throughout Lagos business community. A careful lunch conversation yielded crucial information about securing evidence. Hotels protect guest privacy, Ngozi explained, but they maintain security footage for liability purposes. With the right approach, management might cooperate, especially regarding common areas like lobbies. The following day, Folake visited the peninsula dressed in her most authoritative business attire. She requested a meeting with the general manager, introduced herself with her former banking credentials rather than as Adebayo's wife, and presented a carefully crafted story about potential investment in the property. The conversation eventually turned to security measures, allowing her to inquire about their camera systems. Excellent coverage, the manager assured her. Our lobby, hallways, and entrance are continuously monitored. 3 days and another strategic meeting later, she left the peninsula with a flash drive containing selected footage from the hotel's entrance and lobby. The manager, impressed by her investment potential and unaware of her true purpose, had been surprisingly accommodating. That evening, alone in her home office, Folake watched as the footage confirmed her worst suspicions. Adebayo and Amara, arriving separately but within minutes of each other, taking the same elevator to the executive suite's floor. The timestamps matched the credit card charges perfectly. She didn't cry. The pain had transformed into something colder, more focused. She spent the next day planning her approach, determining exactly when and how the confrontation would occur. Friday evenings settled over Lagos with unusual tranquility. Folake had arranged for their children to stay with her parents, explaining they needed adult time to discuss business matters. She prepared Adebayo's favorite meal, pounded yam with a goosey soup, and set the dining table with their finest china, candles providing most of the illumination. When Adebayo arrived home at 7:30 p.m., later than promised but earlier than usual, he appeared momentarily confused by the intimate setting. "What's the occasion?" he asked, loosening his tie and kissing her cheek casually. "I thought we should talk," Folake replied, her voice deliberately even. "It's been so long since we had dinner alone." The initial conversation flowed with practiced normalcy. They discussed a children's school performance, an upcoming charity gala, and renovations for their vacation home in Calabar. Folake poured wine generously, ensuring his glass never emptied while barely touching hers. "How was your meeting today?" she asked as they finished the main course. "The one at the Peninsula Hotel?" Adebayo's hand paused briefly before setting down his wine glass. "I didn't have a meeting at the Peninsula today." "No? My mistake." She smiled, reaching for the dessert plates. "Perhaps it was Tuesday. You seem to visit there quite regularly." The shift in his posture was subtle but unmistakable. Shoulders tensing, fingers tightening around his napkin. "We occasionally use their conference facilities for sensitive discussions. 8-hour reservations in luxury suites with extensive room service." Folake's voice remained conversational. "Interesting choice for conference facilities." Silence expanded between them. The candle flames wavered slightly as air conditioning cycled through the room. "You've been checking my schedule?" His tone sharpened, attempting to redirect blame. "I've been washing your clothes." She stood, walking calmly to retrieve her handbag from the sideboard. "The receipt fell from your pocket. Your favorite suit, the one you wore on Tuesday evening." She placed a hotel receipt centered on the table between them. Adebayo glanced at it without touching it, his expression transitioning from confidence to calculation. "This is the misunderstanding," he began, professional negotiation skills activating. "The company sometimes requires private spaces for—" "Stop." Folake's command cut through his explanation. 15 years of marriage deserves more respect than these practice lies. The conversation escalated rapidly. Adebayo alternated between denial and minimization, suggesting she was overreacting to standard business practices. Folake responded with increasingly specific details: dates, times, credit card charges. Their voices rose gradually with each exchange. "Who is she?" Folake finally demanded, abandoning pretense. "This is ridiculous." Adebayo stood, attempting to establish physical dominance in the conversation. "You're creating drama from nothing." "Is it Amara?" "Your exceptionally capable assistant." Folake's precise emphasis revealed how thoroughly she had considered this question. "The woman whose name appears in every other sentence when you bother to talk about work." His momentary expression, surprise mixed with guilt, provided confirmation before his words could form a denial. "I spoke with Joseph," she continued, methodically dismantling his defenses. "He confirms dropping you at the Peninsula regularly, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays, always for several hours." Adebayo's strategy shifted to anger. "You're spying on me? Interrogating my staff? Should I show you the security footage as well?" She removed the flash drive from her bag, placing it beside the receipt. "The hotel has excellent cameras. Very clear resolution." Blood drained from his face as he recognized the magnitude of her investigation. His voice lowered dangerously. "You went to my hotel? You obtained private footage. Your hotel?" Folake laughed without humor. "How comfortable you become in your betrayal." Something fundamental broke between them in that moment. The pretense of civilization dropped away, revealing raw emotions neither had acknowledged during their years together. "You had everything," she said, tears finally breaking through her control facade. "Our home, our children, your success. Was it worth destroying all of it?" He moved toward her, hands extended. Whether to comfort or intimidate remained unclear. "Nothing is destroyed unless you make it so. This can remain between us." "Between us?" Her voice rose. "Like the marriage vows that were supposed to be between us? Like the respect that should have been between us?" When he grabbed her shoulders, the contact sparked something primal. Her hand found a heavy crystal wine decanter. The impact against his temple produced a sound both dull and sharp simultaneously. Adebayo staggered, but didn't fall. Blood traced a line down his face as confusion replaced anger in his expression. The second impact came as reaction rather than decision, his open hand connecting with her face with enough force to knock her against the sideboard. What followed unfolded in fragmented moments of escalating violence. Crystal shattered, furniture overturned, accusations hurled with the same force as physical blows. The neighbors would later report hearing crashes and shouts lasting approximately 20 minutes before the sudden, complete silence that proved far more disturbing. The housekeeper discovered them at 6:15 the following morning. She immediately called emergency services, then phoned Folake's sister, who arrived before the ambulances departed. Blood stained the imported marble floors. Furniture lay overturned, and shattered crystal glittered under the morning light streaming through tall windows. Medical examinations revealed the extensive damage. Adebayo suffered a severe concussion, facial lacerations, and 3 broken ribs. Folake's injuries included a fractured wrist, broken nose, and internal bleeding that required emergency surgery. Both were admitted to different hospitals under police guard, victims and suspects simultaneously, in a case that would soon capture national attention. News reached their children through the worst possible channel. A classmate showed Tun a breaking news alert on a phone during morning assembly. School administrators quickly removed both children, calling their maternal grandparents to collect them. The 13-year-old boy and 10-year-old girl faced cameras and shouted questions as they exited their school gates, their confusion and fear documented for public consumption. The children remain our primary concern. Folake's father told reporters outside his home that afternoon. We asked for privacy during this painful time. Despite his plea, photographers maintained positions outside their compound for weeks, capturing images of children who suddenly looked years younger than their age. At Gent Communications, the executive team moved quickly to stabilize operations. Chidi Okafor assumed temporary leadership, issuing a carefully worded statement. While our founder addresses personal matters, Gent Communications continues serving our millions of customers without interruption. Behind closed doors, board members held emergency sessions, debating whether Adebayo could ever return to his position. Share prices dropped 17% within 3 days. 2 major investors paused funding for expansion projects. Government officials who had eagerly associated with Adebayo now avoided mentioning his name. Amara Nwosu disappeared completely. Her apartment stood empty by Sunday evening, neighbors reporting she left with a single suitcase after receiving multiple phone calls. Her family in Enugu denied knowledge of her whereabouts when journalists arrived at their doorstep. Company records listed her as on indefinite leave, though her access credentials had been immediately terminated. Lagos social circles buzzed with conflicting narratives. Some defended Adebayo as a business visionary whose personal failings shouldn't diminish his achievements. Others praised Folake for exposing the hypocrisy of powerful men. Most conversations focused on shocking violence rather than the circumstances that preceded it. This represents what happens when we prioritize success over character, declared Pastor Emmanuel during a Sunday sermon attended by several board members from competing telecommunications companies. The statement received extensive media coverage, despite its obvious self-serving nature. Legal proceedings began while both participants still received medical treatment. Initial charges included domestic violence, assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and attempted murder, though prosecutors later reduced these after evidence suggested mutual combat rather than one-sided aggression. Their legal teams constructed opposing narratives. Adebayo's attorneys characterized the incident as a momentary loss of control during an emotional conversation. Folake's representatives presented extensive evidence of premeditated infidelity and emotional abuse leading to justified self-defense. Both sets of parents appeared in court daily, sitting on opposite sides of the gallery while carefully avoiding eye contact. The maternal grandparents maintained custody of the children, who began therapy sessions 3 times weekly. School administrators created special arrangements allowing them to continue education while avoiding public exposure. Business associates quietly distanced themselves. Charity organizations removed Adebayo's name from donor walls. Social invitations for both parties disappeared. The compound in Ikoyi stood empty except for security personnel. The bloodstains removed, but the damage to the family impossible to erase. 6 months after that violent Friday evening, the Okonkwo family existed only in legal documents. The divorce proceedings concluded with a settlement that divided assets but could never address the emotional devastation left behind. Neither Adebayo nor Folake received jail sentences, the court accepting a plea agreement that acknowledged mutual responsibility while mandating therapy and community service for both parties. The true punishment existed in irreversible consequences. Tun developed severe anxiety, his academic performance plummeting despite his grandparents' supportive environment. Lola stopped speaking for nearly 3 weeks after the incident, and though she eventually recovered her voice, her childhood innocence remained permanently fractured. Gen Communications continued operations under new leadership. Adebayo retained financial interest but surrendered operational control, his boardroom reputation irreparably damaged. Telecommunications industry publications that once celebrated his business acumen now use the story as cautionary material in ethics discussions. Folake relocated to London with the children 6 months after the court proceedings ended, seeking anonymity impossible to find in Lagos. Former colleagues reported she occasionally consulted on financial projects, but avoided any public-facing roles. The vibrant, confident woman who had organized charity galas and mentored young professionals had vanished. Amara eventually resurfaced in Ghana, working under a different name for a small technology company. Former friends mention occasional contact, but describe her as permanently changed by the experience. More withdrawn, less trusting, carrying invisible scars from choices made and their catastrophic outcomes. What remains most striking about the Okonkwo tragedy is how ordinary its beginnings were. No elaborate conspiracy or exceptional circumstances precipitated these events, just common human failings, ambition disconnected from ethics, intimacy sacrificed for achievement, trust violated through incremental decisions rather than single momentous choices. Each step along this path seemed small in isolation, a lingering touch between colleagues, a late-night meeting unnecessary but justified, a hotel room first visited with excuses, then with anticipation, a receipt carelessly misplaced, individual moments that gathered weight until they crushed the lives containing them. The tragedy offers no simple lessons beyond recognizing how vulnerable we remain to our own impulses and how thoroughly we underestimate consequences when desire overrides judgment. Success, wealth, and status provided no protection against fundamental human frailties. If anything, these advantages created the dangerous illusion of exemption from normal boundaries. For the children, parents, colleagues, and communities affected by this case, the consequences continue unfolding years later. Lives permanently altered through choices that once seemed temporary, private, and containable. If this story affected you, please share it with others, not as entertainment, but as a necessary reminder of how quickly ordinary decisions can cascade into extraordinary consequences. The most dangerous failures aren't dramatic or unusual. They're the quiet compromises we convince ourselves won't matter tomorrow. Your shares help others recognize these patterns before they create their own irreversible stories.